Altea Lucrezia Avanzo. Thank you for being here. I'm honored and very excited to get this conversation going.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm also very grateful and honored to be sharing this time and this space with you.
Oh, did I already lose you? Okay, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. The first little glitch of the day. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm actually like super excited to talk to you because I feel like what you talk about on your channels, not many people are really talking about at all. So you've, I guess, discovered you somehow kind of came across this whole light language thing, if you will. So because I love language. I'm obsessed with it. I've learned some Portuguese, some Spanish, obviously English, and this is like a whole new thing, right? Because there's no one in the world who is like nationally going around and just talking in light language, right? So what exactly is light language and where does it come from?
Okay, so if you imagine a universal understanding and expression of the soul, so if you, obviously on a much larger scale, but if you think English is the world language, light language would be the expression out there in a galactic sense. So it can come through and be expressed in many different ways through sounds, singing, gestures, art. It's really a direct expression and connection of the soul connecting through source consciousness. So it's a very high vibrational frequency communication medium, if you can put it in that way. It cannot really be translated verbatim, so not really word by word, because it's not a language as we would conceptualize a language in our third dimensional density and reality as humans. A language has a structure, whether it's the Anglo-Saxon root or the Latin root, it's a structured way of speaking. The light language doesn't work like that. However, it does have repetition, sounds, vibrations and frequencies that can come through. So after a while that you're speaking it, you kind of know what you're saying and can make a sense of it. It also works directly onto the DNA structure. It bypasses the conscious mind. So when you're receiving light language, even if you're not understanding it, or if it seems a little bit strange and whatnot, your system is still integrating and receiving the codes that come through, which is just a way of saying the expression of light language. The codes that come through are intelligent. What can also happen is sometimes you receive it, but you're not in a space where you're open to integrate it. You're going to integrate it when it's best for you. So maybe when you go to sleep, they work beyond the construct of space and time because they are tuned to fifth dimensional density and frequency. So this is kind of like how I understand it and how I work with it as well. And when it comes down to the movements, the hand gestures, the way I see it is I actually it's almost like codes of light come out from my hands and then anchor into the structure of the matrix construct grid and assist in raising the vibration of the planet and on a collective level. So I hope that explains it.
That was a very in-depth explanation. I feel like there's a lot of phrases in there that we might want to just break down. I assume majority of maybe your followers and even mine, but if someone's just like stumbling across this for the first time, I feel like that was a lot, let's say, right? So where do we start with this? I guess one place is to kind of start where I see a bunch of different people putting out light language videos. Now, a lot of the hand gestures seem similar and a lot of like the way that it's written seems similar, but like you're saying with like this conscious and subconscious, it's not like you could, or is it? Maybe it is. Let's pose this as a question. Can you talk to other people in light language and then they understand back and forth and like kind of have this back and forth like we're doing right now?
Yes, you can. Again, it's not like a verbatim understanding word by word, but yes, I have full-on light language conversations with my 2-year-old. Children can channel and speak
Really?
light language because they they're not programmed, and they're not their mind hasn't been kind of like programmed by the structure, so they're very open. So I started speaking light language to my child from when I was still pregnant with her. And she understands and she responds to me in light language as well. It sounds different from mine because it's her expression, of her light language. But yes, you can most definitely have conversations in this language.
Well, that's crazy. We got to dive into that, because the first thing that was coming to mind was, the idea of like kind of the prefrontal cortex develops once you get older in life. And so, the fact that they're more in their quote unquote subconscious brainwave pattern, that's what would open them up to this light language state. And even kind of what you just said there was that you were even talking to them when you were pregnant. Is this something that they've even confirmed, where they're like, oh yeah, I remember whenever you were pregnant with me and we were having, conversation about XYZ?
Yeah, she's just over 2, so she doesn't really have full on conversations yet. However, I have noticed that it's almost like when I chant certain light language, kind of like soothing lullabies that I used to chant when I was pregnant, she recognizes them. So I guess when she gets a little bit older, that is a conversation that I will have with her for sure.
I'm excited for that. I'm not even in the dynamic. I'm excited for that conversation. That's super cool. You'll have to bring her on your like Instagram or something to talk about that, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
And so then I guess I'm trying to like kind of figure this out, right? Because I think there's a lot of science that proves that even from a trauma perspective, that we can pick up on traumas that our moms are going through, like when they have us, or like if they're dealing with their own stuff and we're not even quote unquote consciously aware of it. Or hell, I mean, people say that we're not even conscious, I guess, whenever we're in our mother's womb. And yet somehow we can pick up on that and kind of we'll still play out those patterns once we come out into the 3-dimensional world. So was there certain like intentions that you were kind of like taking into it, like for nourishment or for health? Like what is like the whole mindset when you're talking to your kid in your womb?
So for me, because I knew about this child like years before she was going to come through, and it was just a very intense and beautiful experience that I had with her. I was actually playing frequency to her when I was pregnant. I was actively working on my own karmic cycles to clear them in order for her to come through without any karmic baggage, which she did, which was very beautiful. I think a little bit was part of her contract, but also part of my work. So I was already kind of like in tune, connected to my guides, speaking to my guides. So I was getting divinely guided throughout the process. But what I would suggest for, like a person who isn't necessarily an energy worker, but who does want to, do good to the child and really assist her before she even or he even comes out, I would say to play solfeggio frequencies and binaural beats, and then really work with your own centeredness, your own groundedness, your own being neutral, because they feel everything. And if you are an agitated and stressed out person, that's what your child's going to pick up, whether it's in the womb, whether it's just come out and whatnot. So obviously we're human. So I'm not saying to not feel the emotions, but move through them in a way that is healthy. Don't suppress them. And and I think all the mothers can agree with that, feeling that it's kind of like very, very special to, have this. It's something that I wouldn't even know how to describe, because you have like something that's alive, in you. growing and moving and whatnot. So you will always be divinely connected to your child, and you will always, to an extent, know what is best for her or for him. But I think taking in consideration a little bit of spiritual practices can really go a long way, especially with like the crying and the because I was very grateful, because I was guided through this whole process, and my daughter came out beautifully. She like slept 6 hours through the night, even as a newborn. I never had those problems where, every 2 hours you have to wake up and whatnot. Yeah. And, so everyone would come and say to me, does is not possible. How is this possible? Kids cry at night. And I'm like, well, no, she sleeps through actually. And then she wakes up and then she feeds and then she sleeps again and whatnot. And now she's 2.5 and she's never had to take any like antibiotic, any medication. And she's never been sick. She's never had anything. So I think with just doing really small things in that sacred process of, you know, the pregnancy can really make a big difference to the physical being and to the healing of the soul, because you don't want to give them your karmic baggage. So try and do the work also on yourself before you bring a soul into the world.
And maybe that's a good thing to kind of highlight, right? Because I feel like, and maybe this is me, well, I feel like, you know, speaking light language, bringing that in, that's like a whole nother level of spirituality. It's at least let's say another dimension of it. So, you know, people who are listening who are kind of just, you know, let's say, you know, dipping their toe in spirituality or kind of just getting started, and they are a mother in this situation or are expecting a kid, what are those like basic practices? I know you mentioned binaural beats, which are very fascinating things that I've used myself. So what are those like small tangible things that mothers or expecting mothers could use or dive into to aid in that release of karmic baggage?
Well, the light language would definitely assist, because remembering that the light language is the new technology that is given to us from our, you know, galactic ancestors and beings, and from our parts of self, which have come here and chose to have this human experience. So I would definitely say, be mindful who you're listening to, because there's a lot of different channelers out there. So pick one that resonates with you and that you can feel within your heart center. But definitely that would help. Being mindful and conscious of the food that you're eating. So if you are following like a carnivore diet, bless your food, bless your meat. Make sure that you're not eating food that has been slaughtered in a way that's, you know, very heavy and that's gone through a lot of pain, because as you're eating it, then you don't want to eat that karmic baggage. So now you've got your karmic baggage and the cows and the chickens, and you know what I mean? So be mindful of blessing your food as well. So, and I would say also movement, things like yoga, Pilates, just movement, especially in the morning. And the reason I say that is because when we sleep and we go into the astral realms, we tend to do a lot of work in those areas as well. And then when you wake up, you'll have energy to release. So even 5 minutes of stretching in the morning, this is good for anyone, not just like pregnant woman. Even 5 minutes of stretching will like help you just to move through whatever thing has come up, whatever thing has been static within your physical vessel throughout the night.
Yeah, I know, man, whenever I wake up, I'm so tight. Just everything, back, legs, shoulders. I'm just like, this is rough. So yeah, I know I'm even trying to more integrate that, what would you call it? Energy of stretching in the morning as well, which seems like a very powerful, subtle, but powerful way to kind of get your body moving, get the blood flowing. Do you think that, you know, because you kind of touched on how in the beginning, when you hear these light languages, it might be at night when they get integrated. Could this help with that integration process? If, let's say I watch one of your videos, I don't feel anything shift, I go to bed, my spirit does whatever integration it needs to do, and then I wake up and I'm feeling tight. Would that stretching help with that integration process?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It would help with any integration process, but definitely also if you're listening to the light language. And even if you don't necessarily feel anything straight away, as we said, your system will still be integrating on a subconscious level. So definitely movement will assist. Like I'm like all pro, like the physical part of the raising the consciousness, because everything needs to rise together, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical. You can't spend, 5 hours a day meditating and then you're not moving your body. You know what I mean? Like it needs to kind of like all rise together.
Yeah, because I think that was, where did I read this? I think someone was talking about whoever the first yogi was, and I guess I feel like I'm being disrespectful because I'm not remembering his name. Somebody was talking about the quote unquote first yogi, and they were saying that in that story he would spend like a lot of time, majority of his days would just be either meditating or like jumping around and dancing. And so he would like be in this deep meditative state where he would like be feeling all these energies. They say he was like even crying, and then he would kind of like break out of it and then just kind of be dancing and moving and ecstatic movement, if you will. And it's it's an interesting thought that's coming to mind with what you're saying here with regards to finding even that balance of, okay, how much of it should I be sitting? How much of it should I be moving? You know, and it's, I mean, even like, you know, in the day to day, if someone's like working or something and you're always sitting, and then you need to kind of get out and move that around. And I'm even thinking from a podcast perspective, because we'll be sitting here for a couple hours. And so like getting up and moving is probably the best thing to do afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the yogis are quite interesting. Hey, I was in India last year for a little bit. I went to the holy land of Rishikesh to learn from the sadhus and do yoga and Kundalini yoga. I had done already some yoga here, but I wanted to go there where the yoga was born and whatnot. And yeah, they've got some interesting teachings. I do believe that some of it is a little bit outdated because they're still learning on practices from 3,000 years ago, and we've evolved as species. So I believe that with what we're receiving now with regards to new technology, whether it's light language, psychic activations, vision, or whatever it is that comes through. But there is definitely a lot to learn in the roots of, the different practices that the sadhus have and whatnot. So yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was thinking about it also as I was speaking and thinking about the practices and whatnot and what I took from it, some parts of it, and some of it I was just like, no, this is insane. This is mental. I'm not going to do this.
It's almost
but
like
I guess to each their own.
Yeah, it's almost like we're connected to the same universal consciousness or something. I don't know.
Yeah, literally.
No, it's cool. And I think, honestly, I think that's like something, I mean, just speaking on that perhaps for a second, we'll get back to the physical stuff, is especially I've noticed with talking with certain people who, well, just like the spirituality community kind of in general, is it seems like there is this like interconnected nature of like understanding, like when how do I articulate this? Like when you don't have so many barriers, right? You're not too worried about, let's say, judgment or, fear or what other people are going to think. And you have that innate ability to trust your instinct and kind of flow with it, right? Like how I kind of just brought up the yogi out of nowhere. It seems as if that's like there's like this weird little like dance that's kind of happening that you're both tapped into and understanding like the next flow of the conversation, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's an alignment in frequency. I mean, that's really all everything is to an extent, because everything is frequency. And when you are aligned or tuned into the same frequency, then that's kind of like when you go in the same direction. It's the same with love, like people, oh, we in love and this and that. It's an alignment in vibration. It's an alignment in frequency that you're feeling that is very strong, and then, then it can be karmic and whatnot, but just in general. And yeah, and it's the same. And I think when your baseline vibrational frequency is already quite high, then when you come into these container spaces like what we have created now, it's almost like also the teams come together and they're like, now speak about this, and now talk about that and whatnot. And I've experienced that also with other energy workers, and in spaces where I'm holding workshops and whatnot, that there's a few different people, and then all of a sudden 4 of them are asking the same question that it is completely off topic, but they all felt like they needed to come through in that way. So for sure, it's like we all tapped into same vibrations and frequencies.
And I'm sure this is also something you've probably seen throughout your work, where there'll be like something happening in your life and you'll fix it, or you'll like recognize it, or it'll be a small pivot, and then your next 5 or 6 clients will have that same exact issue.
It's a story of my life. And what I also notice and see, which is very interesting, is I see collective patterns. So let's say I see, I generally see between 6 to 10 clients a day. So let's say, okay, my Monday goes like this, like that. By the time it's my Tuesday and I'm seeing like my evening clients on my Tuesday, now it's like the third person that in their astral was having an apocalyptic dream. Okay, just like a random, example. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, so this is what's happening. The timelines are being cleared. So you're all having different dreams. Or for example, this is what happened this week. This past week, it's been like a food theme. A lot of people that have been coming to me with their regular sessions and whatnot, they like all of a sudden, like they can't eat what they usually been eating, or they're not hungry, or they're eating like they're craving like weird fried foods, or they're just craving bananas. So there's been some kind of timeline readjustment on how people are feeling the food. So definitely, for sure. And then, as you said, through my own experience, like when I first went through my intense activations many years ago, I went through an abusive relationship. And then when I came out of that, for the first like few months to a year, I had so many women that came to me that had gone through the same thing and that had come out of it. And then I assisted and I helped. And still now to this day, I get, some people to help in that way. So because I had quite a lot of very intense experiences in my life, and my guides always said to me, they're like, no, this is part of your contract. This is because you need to help. Your lessons are going to be, in a way so that you live them quite deeply so that you can understand, because I think you can relate only to a certain extent through something that you haven't been through, if it makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like, I mean, hell, like for an example, the example you brought up, like an abusive relationship, I would feel so inadequate to even just help the first person with something like that. I mean, like I have a rough guess and I could kind of figure it out maybe, but like, by all stretches of the imagination, I would kind of feel like a fraud at some level if someone was like, oh, I'm in an abusive relationship. I'd be like, oh yeah, you should just leave it. And it's like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't fucking understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so then this actually is kind of an interesting corollary that we can spin back into with your daughter, because, and this is kind of interesting, right? Is like, you're talking about how you cleared the karmic baggage for her to come in. How does this kind of tie into helping, right? Because I feel like, at some level, if you have no karmic baggage, then it does elevate you, right? You feel lighter, you're at a higher frequency. But if you don't have these physical, let's say, karmic lessons that you're learning on this physical plane, then how would it be that, and maybe the answer is just that she would be helping in a different way, but how do you visualize even that her place is? Does that make sense?
Yeah. She'll still have lessons to go through. She's just not carrying that baggage that we would be carrying perhaps from past lives or from karma that hasn't been neutralized. It doesn't mean that she hasn't had the karmic experience. The karma is just balanced within her system and not out of balance. We come here with karmic baggage to neutralize it and to balance it. When they come here with clear karma, it doesn't mean that they haven't necessarily had the experience or that they're not going to have it. It just means that it's neutral. Does it make sense?
I might need to explain a little bit more. I may need to ask you to explain a bit more. But so it's like, it's more that she's not taking on your karma, for instance, and she just only has hers to deal with when she comes in. Is that kind of the way? It's
basically like, okay, so if you imagine karma being an energetic reverberation. So let's say in a past lifetimes, I was a murderer. Okay. I used to kill people. It's a very extreme case. Okay. I don't deal with that karma. I come in this lifetime still carrying the karma of the lifetime where I had murdered people. So how would I neutralize to an extent that in this lifetime? I would either have to have really intense lessons if I, wasn't listening, or I would, I don't know, for example, become a doctor. So I would help heal people. So I would start balancing out the karma from that previous lifetime. But if I would have had a past lifetime where I was a murderer and the one after it, I was a nurse, so I was helping and healing, and those two balanced out, I would come into this one with clear karma. Does it make sense?
Yeah, because I get that. You're kind of on this pivot almost of experiencing almost the opposite, right? I think it's kind of hard to put words into it, but I get that. But so then how does that then relate in regards to, I guess, your daughter, for instance, right? So using the murder example, hypothetically, and maybe we shouldn't use your daughter specifically for this, but hypothetically, if somebody, was a murderer, and then they were brought into this life, but you were helping to clear their karma before they came into it. How does that almost work? Because like my mind, and maybe this is like the 3-dimensional mind stuck in this reality, but it feels as though you need to experience that healing or do that healing in this 3-dimensional plane to achieve that neutralization.
So I'll explain to you. It works differently with a child and it works differently from a family member. So I'll give you an example. Okay. So when it comes to the child, because the soul hasn't come in yet, you can clear on an energetic perspective. You don't have to clear necessarily in the 3D. However, this is something that happened to me. So my grandmother was very sick about 2 years ago. She was sick for about 3 years, like very sick, like body deteriorating, like she couldn't get up. She was in pain, constantly clearing very intense karma. And at one point, so she died in October of 2021. And I think around April of 2021, I said, listen, guys, I'm speaking to my guides and hers. And I said, can she pass on? I really want to help her. What can I do? Is there anything? And they said to me, if you want her to pass on now, you can take on her karma, but then you'll have to deal with it in this lifetime. And I was actually like, no, okay, guys, I'm going to send her love. I'm going to send her healing. I'm already doing enough. So I was given that choice, but it would have had to be dealt with in the 3-dimensional density and reality, because that was kind of like how she was dealing with it. If it makes sense, does this kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess it's just like a difficult thing to conceptualize, and maybe it's just the level of understanding either that we're at or the nature of the conversation. But so it does seem like, do you have maybe like a visualization that could help me out with understanding, I suppose, the difference between it being a child, right? Or even a spirit that hasn't come into the body yet. Why is it that you could energetically work on that spirit as opposed to maybe a physical, a spirit that's physically anchored into this reality? Does that make sense?
Because if it's already anchored in, then they must do it themselves. The soul hasn't come in. It doesn't have a physical body to an extent do it themselves yet, if it makes sense. So, and being the mother, having it within you, it's almost like the souls are almost one to an extent until there is kind of like that physical separation. But there are children now that are coming in with like completely no karma, not even like karmic experience. They are literally like new souls. It isn't my daughter's case, but there's a lot of them that are coming through. And in that case, you wouldn't really have to do anything except clearing your own. But it's complicated. Like it's very complicated because then what can happen is if you haven't cleared part of your own, you can actually pass it on to her because your soul and her soul are connected when they're within your body. The same with the father as well. But if you know what you're doing, then you can clear it. But it's difficult to conceptualize because it's kind of like there's nothing, tangible to an extent. So it's all, and even for me, like I'm still learning how to, work with these things and work in these realms and work, outside of what is our 3-dimensional density and reality. And what I've learned is through my own experience, through clients, through, visions, through my guides and whatnot. But I'm sure that there's so much more out there and so many more people who have been kind of like doing this also for long. Another example that I can give you. So what I'll do is when I go into a healing with a client, so I do Akashic and Karmic clearing. It's part of what I offer in my services. So I'll go into the Akashic records. And for those who are listening that don't know what the Akashic records are, it's basically like kind of like a database, which is outside of space-time continuum. So it's outside of any of the dimensions. Imagine it almost as like a parallel universe, like if that helps, which contains all the information of all the possible timelines, of all the universes. It's kind of like this huge database of everything sort of thing. And how I understand and work with it is you actually go, you request, and then there's actual guides there that manage it, and then they bring you information. Anyway, long story short, when clients come to me and they come for karmic clearing and Akashic clearing, what I do is I go into their Akash. I see what experiences are causing them blockages in this lifetime. So let's say they have a blockage in the root chakra because they were an orphan who was abandoned. The parents died in a car crash and they're feeling guilty subconsciously, and this is stopping them from feeling safe and secure within this lifetime. I go into that experience, I bring it out and I say it to them and I explain it to them. I clear the timeline myself as well. I physically actually go in and I actually pull it out and unravel it. That's what I do. I see this kind of like thing and then I unravel it. I bring in the soul fragment that could have been broken off within that experience. I anchor it within their system and then I tell them what happened. And then they also need to do their own work. They also need to go in and sit with the experience, send love, send healing to neutralize it. So this would be a more practical way to an extent of to do this in this lifetime.
That's pretty crazy work.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I can explain more if you need me to. And it's a lot, yes.
No, I'm trying to, I guess, figure out if other people would, I mean, I kind of get it, but it's like almost in like this abstract sort of way. It's almost like we know 2 + 2 = 4, right? But it's kind of like when you're going through that, there's like a piece of me that's like, okay, like I internally get it, but like then once I try to like put my mind to it and conceptualize it, it's kind of like it starts to almost fade away from me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but to me, this is also the beauty of, you know, being in this line of work and being in this understanding, because it's trust. It's trusting, it's trusting yourself, it's trusting in those higher realms and energies and understandings. And you don't have to, you know, necessarily always understand it. It's feeling, it's being, it's heart-centered, it's compassion, it's emotion, you know, and it's also self-trust and self-love, and practice, I guess, as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of areas out there that still need to be explored. And I think it's really beautiful that more is opening up. I mean, the Akashic records have been around, I think, since the 1920s. Like there's like Edgar Cayce, there's a lot of people who had written about them, some contemporary and some older writers as well. So that is a concept that's been around for quite some time. I think people have their different takes on it, but it's been around for long. Yeah.
Well, just to clarify, you're saying that the knowledge of the Akashic records has been around since the 1920s, not that they just started recording in the 1920s. Just put that out there, just a quick little.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's pivot this back then to the actual physical realm, because that's a little bit more tangible maybe and something we can kind of grasp onto a bit more. I remember when we initially talked, you were saying that this whole thing with like light language was something that wasn't coming to you. And I believe you were saying because you didn't have the muscle mass or the body in order to hold that frequency or that energy. Are you able to kind of like walk us through? First of all, am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I can expand a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's been a little while since we talked about it.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, so basically what happened with me is I was channeling light language, and because I was doing lives with like 200, 300, 400 people, I was actually told by my guides to put on some muscle mass on my physical body to be able to withstand the channel. So what I do when I channel, I'll bring in from up and then it will come out through my heart center or through my hands and through my physical vessel in different forms of light and codes, sacred geometry and things like that. So if you want it, okay, so I teach how to channel. I hold masterclass on learning to channel and learning to channel light language. It's not really learning, it's kind of like a remembering. But understanding that to be a clear channel, there are certain things, you know, that you need to, you know, like to an extent, I don't want to say sacrifice because it's not a sacrifice, but your vessel needs to be very clear. So nothing that pollutes your system, no alcohol, no smoking. I mean, ideally also no coffee, just being really as healthy in your body and in your mind, like the way you portray yourself, the way you carry yourself as a human being needs to be in alignment with the work it is or what it is that you do. So with me, I actually activated around 2018, but I had been getting psychic vision and intuition since I was a child. So since I was a young child, I'd get like prophetic dreaming, or, psychic messages and understandings and whatnot. I blocked it out. Like in my teens, I went through kind of like phases, and then around my early 20s or so, it kind of started coming back. Then I had quite a few intense life experiences. I had like a near-death experience as well, which really changed my perspective on a lot of things. And then that's when like my big healing started around 2017 into 2018, and then 2018 my light language activated, and I was activated through it was quite intense. I had a few intense experiences. I was actually in the desert at kind of like the Burning Man of South Africa, and I had like maybe 5 or 6 different light language channelers, which at the time was like unheard of, because like it was, like 5 or 6 years ago, and they all worked on me. So I had like I was blown open, basically. Yeah, I was blown open. And then I had a few experiences with plant medicine as well. I worked a little bit with the hape, which is like the shamanic tobacco. And that was quite intense. That was very clearing for me. And then, and even if you go and see in my channelings back in 2018, it's different to how I channel now, because then obviously my channel has evolved and changed. And you can still obviously see that it's me, but it's expanded, as has, my life and my own experience. But I think when it comes down to channeling, this is what I always say: anyone can channel. We all have a chakra system. We all have an energy field. If you want to learn how to channel, anyone can learn how to channel information. Anyone can connect to their guides. We are a perfect machine that can tune into any vibration or frequency. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're out and someone next to you is drinking, and you don't want to drink. If you tune in, you can feel drunk just by tuning into the vibration of his frequency next to you. Does it make sense? So that's to the extent that you can experience anything. So for me now, I really like, if I want to feel or understand something, whatnot, I'll just tune into the experience of it. And through the reverberation of the frequency, I can feel it within my system.
Yeah, the alcohol one definitely hits home with me. I know I've even talked about other people have experienced this as well, where you go out at night, don't even have a sip of alcohol, only drink water, but you're hanging out with friends, you want to relate to them, you're hugging them, you're laughing, you're making jokes, and then you wake up the next morning and you feel like you blacked out, drunk, hungover, you know what I mean? And it's very fascinating how I think that's probably a perfect example of how, you can share energy, let's say, with people, or even have an experience without doing the physical substance that would, let's say, ignite that feeling, or even the after effects of such a, profound thing, such as like alcohol, for instance.
Yeah, I think like the important thing is to do it through choice. So what you're speaking about is picking up someone's vibration or frequency because you haven't maybe shielded or aren't grounded in your own. Right. So that is something also that is super common. I actually published an ebook 2 years ago on energy cords. And another example would be you're at the supermarket and all of a sudden, like, you're angry for no reason and you don't understand why. And then the person in front of you just had an argument with their wife or with their husband, and you're picking up on that vibration. So that's kind of like, I like to call them collective cords, things that you can pick up. And this is a big problem with the starseeds right now because they're all empaths. And what happens is no one is teaching in school that you need to actually shield your frequency when you are going into certain places, not out of fear, obviously always out of love. But I have a very practical, structured approach to spirituality, for as much as it can be, structured because of the subject of spirituality. But, if everyone would get taught in school how to manage and deal with their energy, we wouldn't get mental conditions. We wouldn't have all these people, with these mental conditions that they have. We wouldn't have people with depression. We wouldn't have people with nervous breakdowns, because all this is people that are not able to handle what is coming at them from an energetic perspective. So let's say you're going out again, exactly as you said. So maybe it happens once or twice and then you're fine and you're okay with it. But someone who is either more fragile, or their energy field is more open because they are very sensitive, because they're an empath, or because they've lived on other planetary constellations where the vibration is so high that they don't need to defend themselves from envy, anger, fear, or these low vibrational frequency emotions. So then they come here to have the human experience, and all of a sudden they're bombarded with like jealousy and anger and backstabbing and whatnot, and they don't know how to handle it. So if everyone would just apply like one mindfulness practice in the morning, which would just to be cover yourself in white light, then it would make a huge difference to the imbalances that we have in society.
That's really cool. So is that kind of what I guess you would suggest? I'm gonna have to look for that ebook first of all, but second of all, is that what you would like suggest to people? Like, when we're doing our stretching routine in the morning, is to visualize some like white light, just kind of a shower of white light that we're in?
Exactly just like that. And you can shield and protect your house, your loved ones, your car, really anything. Adding like just a small mindfulness practice like that will make a huge difference. And it's what I teach to my clients who come to me as well. Or even things like while you're showering, imagine the water like cleansing you off at the end of the day of any stress, any trauma. Our visualization, our intention is the single most powerful thing that we have. With it, we can really do anything. So, just even like imagining your vibration rising, even just imagining that you are in this bubble of light and of love, will really set a tone for you throughout your day.
So here's an interesting question that was kind of coming through here. I have a feeling I know your answer, but damn it, I don't like whenever I preface it that way. So I apologize. I need to get away from doing that. Sorry, that's just like a personal podcast interview thing I'm working on. Disregard that. Okay, so in regards to this, the visualization, I know that in our 3D physical reality, we tend to say that, or tend to experience it in the sense that, it's like that placebo effect of like, if we believe we're going to have a good day, we're going to have a good day. If we believe we're going to have a bad day, we're going to have a bad day. Now, where it gets interesting, in my opinion, is when you talk about, okay, you're in a white light. So then it like helps you to believe that you are protected and that all these things are going to occur. Do you think that it's just purely our subconscious belief that is creating this? Or is there actually a, let's say, external energy of white light that is shielding and protecting us?
Well, nothing's external because we all part of source consciousness. So I think once you see as everything being a part of the one, then you don't really see anything as external. So I would say that, yes, it's us. Does it make sense? Yeah.
So it's almost, the answer is that it's both. It's not either or, it's that it's and.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I guess that would, yeah.
That's fascinating. I like that. I need to sit with that for a second.
Let it sink in.
Yeah. I know someone out there is listening that needs to let that just sink in as well. What I was also thinking of, and we're going back to how you were saying, like, from 2018, you had a kind of a different, let's say, channel versus now it's different. Would you say that people who, maybe this is the first time people have heard of you, have come across you, do you think that if they are in a certain place of, let's say, energetic alignment, that the 2018 videos would be more beneficial for them as opposed to where you're at now?
Sorry, I don't understand. Can you just re-ask that? If they are in what do you mean by energetic alignment?
Like, here's the way I guess I'm kind of visualizing this. Like, your vibration, I'm for sure has, let's say, increased from 2018 to 2023. So do you think that somebody who might not be at such a high frequency, who maybe is a little bit more baseline, who's kind of just diving into this information, would 2018 Althea resonate with them more than 2023 Althea?
No, they can receive either way. Some of the people that are following me now go back to my videos from 2019 and hear the clearing from there. No, remember, the codes work beyond space and time. That was just to an extent my human pulling them through that I was speaking about, not the codes themselves. The codes themselves are working fifth dimensional density and above. So they're not, I wouldn't say that there is, better codes or worse codes or stronger codes or less stronger codes. It's just codes. You know what I mean? It was my portraying of them as a human, as they were coming through, that was different. So this is how you can understand it, like maybe like visualizing it. So it's kind of like my channel got more clear to an extent, but the codes that were coming through will still be as beneficial. If I go back and listen to a video of myself clearing from 2018, it's still going to work.
Gotcha. So then when you say your channels become more clear, is it more clear to you or more clear in the sense of like what you're putting out?
It's more clear to me.
Okay.
And then I would say that, the difference would be that now I know if it's me, if it's a being, if it's my higher self, if it's technology that I'm channeling, I will know the difference. Meanwhile, when I first started, it was a little bit more difficult. It took me about 6 months to a year to understand more of what it is that was coming through. I did really trust, and my guides were like, no, trust, like it's okay. Like I thought I was going mental because it wasn't like there were, I think there were maybe, like, if you Googled light language at the time, there were maybe like 5 or 6 light language channelers. There's, I think, tens of thousands now that do it.
Wow.
So it was quite, it wasn't very known. I had a colleague of mine who had been channeling for a few years, and he had known someone who'd been channeling for over 10 years. So I was in contact with people that had experience with regards to this. But I would say that it took a bit for me, for my human to understand, and for, how can I say, my channel to fully integrate. So now my channel is fully integrated. What does that mean? It means that I'm constantly in channel. It doesn't matter if I'm speaking to you, if I'm speaking to my child, if I'm speaking to, I don't know, someone at a supermarket. My channel's anchored in it. Before, I would have to tune in and call it in, if it makes sense.
It does make sense.
Now it's just integrated,
That's something, who was I talking to? Oh, someone who I think you actually know, Erin Lyons. I had her on the podcast, and she was...
Yeah, we did some work together.
Yeah, I think you guys did like an ANA or Q&A together or something. That's cool.
Yeah, we did a workshop, and we did some lives together as well. I know Erin, she's lovely. She's
super dope. And I think that was something that she brought up as well, where she was saying that she's like just like in her channel. And to me, when did I quote unquote open my channel, or I guess became attuned to it? When was that? Less than a year ago, I think. It was definitely less than a year ago. And I'm kind of like, I was at that place when I was talking to her. I was like, I want to get in that spot where it's just like, I don't have to have like this invocation to open it up. I just want to kind of be in there. And so we had an interesting conversation about that as well. So what was like a big pivot, or how did you kind of find your way into, okay, I have this invocation, I need to get into my meditative state. And then like, where was and maybe it was more than one thing, but like what pivoted you into now just embodying and just being the channel, let's say?
So, I'm a very I'm an Aries. So for me, I'm like,
Same.
I'm a do person.
Yeah.
So I started, I was like, okay, like I'm channeling. Okay, let me start first with a YouTube channel, then with an Instagram. Then, so I just kind of like started throwing it all out there a little bit, like blindly, like not knowing, you know what I mean? And then with time and trust and trusting myself and, I'm working on clients, and it's like everything, the more you practice, the better you get at it. It's like a sport, you start and you're not so good, and then you get better, and then you get better, and then you get better. It's the same with channeling and with having an integrated channel. And I think a lot of it comes down to, again, mindfulness practices. being in a space of objective observation and staying in a space of neutrality, staying outside of the polarity, not allowing for your emotions to take over. And if they do, then dealing with them in a way that is healthy, so for me, yeah, and this is very interesting, because this is also what the sadhus say in India. They say that you meditate to then have that peace inside you. You can have that peace inside you without having to meditate 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
You can still get to a space where, so when you get to that space, and when you are embodied and anchored, and this is, it's interesting, because me and Erin have had this conversation a lot of times as well, like with us as friends, and then also on lives and stuff, that it really comes down to the grounding, to the being grounded, and the being in the moment, and the being embodied and present in the now. If you're too busy worrying about the past or about the future, then you're not going to be present in the now. And only when you're present in the now, you can see all the different possible timelines and make the choices that are then for your highest alignment. Because if you're too busy worrying, then the choice that is best for you might just, pass in front of you and whatnot. And by being in that space of neutrality, you then start to align with a higher vibrational frequency, which then allows you to co-create your reality, to be embodied, or, to be in that constant flow space, I guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm kind of just giving people a couple seconds if they want to rewind that for 2 minutes and just listen to that again. Because, yeah, I think that's something I need to re-listen to as well. It's super powerful when you speak of it in like those terms. And so where my mind's kind of going is I'm kind of gripping to whenever you said, when you started this space, there was maybe only a couple, 5, 6, 7 people who were talking about light language. And now it's up to thousands, maybe tens of thousands, as you said. And where I'm trying to marry this with is that I know like English as a language, I think like modern English has only been around for maybe like, I don't even want to guess, but it's like less than 1,000 years, I think. Like modern language that English that we're speaking right now is like only 1,000 years old. So with that being said, do you see the future of language shifting into a place where majority of people are speaking in light language? Like, and I don't know, if you do, how long would that be? Or maybe it's not something that we would even be speaking day to day. I mean, I guess, kind of just where do you see the future of light language going?
That's an interesting question. Thank you for asking that, because it's going to make me think as well. So, what I'm kind of getting is yes and no. So there will be unifying, on a collective level. The light language will assist in bringing, but for now, it's more here for the healing. And the way that it's going to be, there'll be universal understanding through emotion. So without even needing to necessarily speak. Does it make sense? Like the language as we know will to an extent be bypassed, and it will be into a space of more like emotion and frequency and vibration, which doesn't mean that, we're going to stop talking. We're still going to be speaking and communicating, but because we will get sooner to a point where we can do that through psychic intuition than through a new language. Does it make sense? Yeah,
like telepathy almost.
Yeah, and like feeling and knowing. And this is also when I teach my masterclass on channeling, I explain there's the 5 clairs, which correspond to the 5 senses. And then there is the 6th sense, which is the claircognizance, which is just that knowing. So it's just kind of like a knowing, and a lot of people have that and they're not aware of it. Like, spiritual people, or even big successful people, or people who public speakers and speak, and people who, kind of like have made something of themselves through like trusting themselves and knowing. So that's kind of like where we are all heading towards,
It's super fascinating, because what's coming to mind for me is, even from a scientific or even as a evolutionary perspective, we started off without speaking, right? Like our very fundamental being was hand gestures, movement, the way our facial expressions are made. And it's And it was something I've even kind of been learning, is like going through just like learning how to communicate with people, because I personally, I kind of joke about it. I don't know if people would take offense to this, but I kind of joke about how I feel like I'm autistic in some ways, like I'm somewhere on the spectrum. And I've always kind of seen that from like a social perspective of trying to figure out, why do people speak the way they do? Why do people do what they do? And upon that learning, upon that investigation, I certainly found that speaking with your hands, it reinforces what you're saying, and people like connect with it because they can see what you're saying almost like with your hand gestures or by your facial expressions. Like if you deliver a joke and you're not smiling versus you are smiling. And so I find this all fascinating, and I bring all this up because it seems as though we're almost, based on your answer, we're going back to the beginning in a sense, where we no longer will need language because of just the facial expressions I make or the hand gestures I make. There won't be almost a need for our vocal cords in a sense.
Yeah, I think it will also come down to choice, on an individual level. So it will come down to the choice of the individual. I think we will be presented with a lot of different options. It's very difficult to say from an evolutionary perspective because there's so many different timelines at play right now, especially like in this year that has just started now. But I think, if we look at our galactic beings, and our forefathers and our ancestors and, our future selves and whatnot, they still communicate through sound. They just do it in a lot of different ways. And if they don't need to, they don't necessarily, have to. If you look at when there was ancient Lemuria, they didn't really need to talk. They kind of like sang tunes and things like that, but everything was done through telepathy, and they were super more evolved than what we are now. Do you know what I mean? So I would say that because of the evolution, it kind of like maybe goes also in cycles. Like, they had that, then we had the fall of Lemuria, then we had Atlantis, and we had the fall of Atlantis, and then we had, I'm not a historian, but then we had, like the kind of like primitive humans that came and they didn't speak, and then now we start speaking. And then I guess the real abundance in it is getting to a space where we have the choice to speak or to not to speak, but still to be understood and comprehended.
That's interesting. And so what's also coming to mind, and I don't know, this is an interesting question. I've never thought about this before. Do you think that the evolution of language has almost enabled us, and I'm going to need to phrase this a little bit, enabled us to lie in a sense? Because, the way I'm looking at it, right, is like if we didn't lie at all, if we had no blocks, if we were just truly based on our intuition, you and I and anyone I come into contact with arguably would be able to just telepathically do it, or I could just like look at them a certain way and they would understand what I'm trying to communicate. Versus if language is involved, it almost feels like it's another sensory input that could confuse us in a sense, but behind the pure or true intention of what someone's saying. So, I guess the question kind of is, and I have no idea if you'd have even an answer for this, is would language have helped us to lie or become more deceptive in our approach to interacting with other humans or even the world around us?
Well, I guess it's part of the experience that we chose to have when we came here. Again, it's a choice. It's an option. You choosing to lie. You can choose not to. Blaming it on the language itself, I think to me would be kind of like shifting it onto, like it's more the intention that the individual has behind it, that the language itself, yes, the language, I guess, allows it to, but I think that if you'd want to also lie on a telepathic or emotional level, if you're at that level of comprehension, I guess to an extent you could do that, but you wouldn't do it because you'd be evolved enough to not need to do that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is an answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a weird question. It's just something that kind of came to me. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like you could probably still find a way to lie, and I guess I didn't want to say that like language is the reason that people lie. I would just guess it was more of like this like extra barrier of discernment, right? Because we just like intrinsically would be discerning on facial expressions or body language. But then when you add this layer of language, it might like almost mask it a little bit more. I'm not really sure.
But then I think you can also see it in the other way, like by the tone of the voice, then you can actually interpret if someone is lying or not. So it can also be a vessel to the truth.
I see what you're saying.
Does it make sense? Like the language can actually help in, seeing it in the opposite way, if it makes sense. Or maybe they're trying to lie, but they can't. And the way they're speaking it, then you're actually like the language is allowing you to see it for what it really is.
Right. It's almost just like adding another layer or dimensionality into it. I guess if anything, I mean, you could make the argument that it might make lying even more difficult because of the fact that you don't only have to worry about your body language, you would also have to worry about the tonality, the words you're using. So I guess you could see that going either way with that.
Yeah, but a very interesting question. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to ponder that at my own a little bit more. But something I am getting back to the physical, because I think that's something that might help ground this conversation a bit. We were commenting on the pyramid structure that you have behind yourself, where it's like these copper wires. And if nobody's listening, it's almost like if you imagine like the Great Pyramid, it's almost like just the edges of it are in like copper is what it looks like. And there's like a little crown on top. And the first time that I ever heard of this was in regards to the law of one, where they were talking about how it brings your body into alignment. So that's whenever I first heard about this. And I quite frankly haven't heard of it, have never seen anything since then. So could you give us a little bit of a background on what that is, what it's doing, how it's aiding you?
For sure. I've been working in pyramids for the past maybe 6 or 7 years. I've got about 6 around my house.
Oh, geez.
2 outside, 4 in the house. Yeah. This is my main one that I work with. And yeah, so basically, okay. So the pyramid itself, it's almost kind of like creates a vortex of energy inside it. I don't want to say a portal because this is contained. A portal is a little bit more of a loose cannon. What I do is I actually program my pyramids energetically, which means that I'll sit in my pyramid, I'll do energy work, I'll do clearing, I'll clear people's system and whatnot. As I step out of it, whatever I've cleared will stay in the pyramid and the pyramid system will clear it for me. You can really put anything in the pyramid and make it last longer. You can put fruit, you can put crystals to cleanse them, like you can put flowers and they're going to last longer. They even have like little tiny ones for like animals that animals can sleep in. My animals are constantly in my pyramid. I've put my cats out, but I had both the cats in here earlier. My dog comes here at night to sleep in the pyramid. So it's almost like if you imagine like a vortex of energy within it, that's kind of like how it works. There's a whole thing called pyramidology. There's I don't know what they're called, but there's these guys that I follow on Instagram. They're in the States and they make them also with like kind of like cold wires and crystals. And there's a whole like it's become quite a big thing in the past few years or so. But yeah, it works very, very well for me. Like even when I travel, I take one with me and it really assists me. Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. So it can kind of just like close up super easily, that you're able to kind of just take
this one. Yeah, this one kind of like they open and they bend. So you kind of dismantle it and rebuild it. Yeah.
And did you make this yourself or did you buy it somewhere?
No, I ordered it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can find them like on Etsy or I think even on Amazon. You can find them. Yeah. They're not that difficult to find and they're very reasonably priced. Like one like this is like maybe $200 or something like that. So it's really not bad, especially if you're using it for work.
Do you have any sort of, is there anything you got to look out for when you're purchasing one of these things? Anything like, are there certain dimensions that it needs to be, certain sizing, some stuff like that, the material?
Yeah, the copper would be, I mean, ideally, if you can get one like either in gold or, a really, really high vibrational frequency metal or platinum or something like that, or have them made out of crystals if you can. But no, the copper one is fine. I think it really depends on what you prefer. You get ones where you can even lie in. This one you can sit in, this one you can't stand in. I've got another one where you can stand in. This one's like maybe like 1.9 or 2 meters tall or something like that. But obviously because of the point, then you can't really like stand in it. So I generally sit in it. And then when I do in-person work, I put my clients in it as well. So I work on their system within the pyramid too. But I think, yeah, what calls to your heart and what resonates with you. There's like, as I said, ones where you can lie down, like big flat ones where you can fit 2-3 people in it. There's even ones that I've seen that you can hang and put them over your bed so you're in the pyramid when you're sleeping. What I do is I turn the lights off and I've got a candle going, and then the candle reflects through the pyramid. So the actual pyramid structure is reflected on my wall against my bed when I sleep. So typically I do also sleep in it, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. How did you come across this? How did you come across that, like, these pyramid things work? What was like how'd you unravel that?
I had a friend of mine that was a sound healer who'd been importing them from like Eastern Europe for many years, and he'd been working in them, and he's got like 10 or 15 in his house and does these guided meditations. And then I tried one and I was like, okay, I never want to live without one the rest of my life. And since then, it's been like a love affair with pyramids.
The rest is history.
Literally.
Well, so then that's interesting because it sounds like the geometry isn't that big of a deal from what you're saying. I know in the Law of One, they were saying that like the geometry like is important for like healing and whatnot, but I guess in your experience, the geometry isn't a huge deal.
In what sense? No, the fact that it is a pyramid, the geometry activates the fact.
I guess like the angles of the edges of the pyramid.
Yeah, not in my experience, no. I mean, I work well with this one, but I've also got one of the lower ones, but I prefer working in this one. Okay. But I wouldn't know. I'm sure that there must be some kind of difference, but yeah, I work in this one. The other one I used to like relax and lie down and like de-stress for like my own thing. So I guess maybe that would be a difference from the vibrational frequency of it. But because I program minds energetically, then minds are tuned to my vibration and it's been programmed. So I wouldn't know if you just get it like that. But probably I'm sure there is a study behind what you're speaking about that for sure it has a relevance with the angle of the pyramid.
Gotcha. So then when you're saying that you program it, is that kind of just like you going into meditative state and kind of working with it, or like what does your programming process look like?
I do a bit of both. I'll go with my hands and I'll actually put coding in. So if you imagine me working on like a kind of like transparent screen, that's kind of like what I do. And then I'll generally work with my hands. I'll either like walk around it and put light around it, and then I'll do a little bit of work on the top, and then I'll use some crystals maybe at the 4 corners, depending on it. I program it once as soon as I buy it, and then I don't need to program it again anymore, because once it's programmed, it's programmed.
That's so
and then
cool.
It just clears itself. Yeah.
It's so cool. Because I mean, even as you're going about this, I'm thinking about just getting one for like right here so I can just podcast in the middle of a pyramid.
Yeah. It'll change your life.
Yeah.
You'll sit in it and you won't want to podcast anywhere. I promise you. I promise you.
I'll take this pyramid everywhere with me.
Literally, it's even if you and then you can just message me and I'll program it for you. I could do it remotely as well.
Oh, really?
So if you want me to, I can do that for you. Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'd appreciate that.
It takes me like 5 minutes, so it's really not a problem. But even if you don't have it programmed, it's still going to like do the work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what is like the intention that you would go into like with programming it? Like, would I want to say that like the program of it is for podcasting, or is it for like just being in my highest state of potentiality?
Yeah. I think in your case, I would put a little bit of protection around it, just in case, just so that you don't have like glitches or technology things or things, that malfunction, things like that. And then for your highest alignment, and then for your channel to be open and clear so that you can be clear and embodied when you're communicating, so that the information that comes through is for the highest alignment of everyone who is listening.
I know the listeners would be super grateful about the technology glitches and preventing that from happening. Because sometimes these conversations get like very high vibe, and then, we're both in like this super high state, and then it just crashes on us. It's like, fuck. All right, well, we got to restart it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be a big one. So that's cool. what was I thinking about? I was thinking about something with actually I don't know what I was thinking about. What are you thinking about?
Well, when it comes to glitches and things like that, I think it's important to, yeah, just like sometimes allow them. Sometimes it's blockages. So that's why something like a pyramid could assist you. I mean, I do gridding and shielding before I go on any podcast, any live, anything. I've got like 2 white candles lit, a blue candle for communication and incense. I've got crystals around my technology. I screen all my technology because this thing here is a whole other dimension. So my computer, my phone, my mirrors, the television in the house, all my technology, what I do is I put platinum white light around it every now and then. And, or even like, as I said, before I go onto like a podcast or before I go onto something that is live, before even I do my own lives. So even doing small things like that, I don't know if you already do anything like that, but even doing small things like that will assist in keeping the vibration stable so that the technology doesn't glitch. Because as I said, this is a whole other dimension where things can come in and out of it and can cause blockages and glitches and things like that.
That's super interesting. I mean, I guess I've kind of sort of thought of it in that way. I've done like a little bit of, I guess, energy work before, like interviews and stuff. Like I'll burn some sage and be like, oh, like, you know, welcome in my spirit guides, my guest spirit guides if they wish, and, you know, try to like help guide us to make the best podcast possible. But what is this thing with like the platinum white light that you're kind of speaking about with regards to surrounding the screens with it?
Yeah, it's kind of like the white light that you would put around yourself when you're shielding yourself, just with the highest intention, connecting to source consciousness. Or you can call on the archangelic collective and divine light, and the angels can literally come down and shower you in light as well. It's just really that pure light from the higher realms that you can call in.
Okay. And can anyone do this even if they haven't opened their channel? Just voice activate?
Yes. Of course, anyone, even just by thinking, anyone could do it.
Just by thinking, it just pulls it in.
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting because that was something I was thinking about recently where, and this kind of goes back to our conversation of like embodying our channel. And it was where I was like thinking about if I actually need to truly vocalize the intentions that I'm setting, or if I can just mentally be like, hey, like, you know, spirit guides or this person, like, hey, take care of this thing or help me in this situation, versus actually vocally, you know, putting the vibration in my body and then externalizing it, if that made any sort of difference in anything.
Yeah, it does. And I'll also explain to you why, because this is something that I also teach and speak about a lot. So it's okay to think and to call in from up here. However, if you want to anchor the vibration into your reality, into third dimensional density, you want to speak it. And the reason I say that, it's because you're anchoring it. It's here, it's now. I'm calling in the guides. You're here. Hello, come here with me. Yes, you can call them up here as well, but it makes it that much stronger, that much more anchored if you're calling them. I speak to my guides all the time. I wake up in the morning, I call on them, I speak to them like constantly. Like if someone looks at me, I just look like I'm a mental person, because what I'm doing is like speaking, you know. But in that extent, in my experience, it anchors it more. It does make a difference. It's not necessary. You can still, as I said, you know, call through your third eye, through your psychic intuition, through your mind, but calling in and asking, you know, for help and for assistance with your voice through your throat chakra. It also helps in clearing your throat. It also helps in using your throat. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just an extra thing that can be done to assist.
That's super cool. And so what are instances where you would want to vocalize versus times that you might just want to leave it unanchored? Like, are there situations where you might not want to anchor in something, and so you just kind of like leave it like through as a mind connection type thing, versus, no, this is something that I really want to anchor in, so I'm going to speak it out loud?
I guess it depends on what you're asking. I mean, ideally, if you're asking for help with your guides, you'd want them to be as present within you as possible. So, you know, you'd want to speak it out. But then again, if you are in a meditative space where you're in 0 point neutrality and you want to align with the vibration of something, then you don't really need to speak it. You just need to become that vibration. So in that case, it's not really necessary. But to get to 0 point neutrality, you need to obviously, work through the meditation, be in that space where you're everything and nothing. And then once you're there, you become whatever it is that you want, but you do it outside of a space of attachment, because, if you do it with the want and with the need, then it becomes attachment. Then it comes in a space of, which comes from a space of lack, which puts you back into the polarity. So just tell me if you need me to expand on that, I can, because I know that it's quite like...
I think that was good. I think it'll just be something that people need to just click, go back 30 seconds and then just like re-listen to that.
But even if you don't think you are understanding on a subconscious level, the information will integrate. Like that's something that I've also learned.
Yeah, that's always a cool one too, because I know I've seen some of your posts or your reels, and energetically I'm kind of just like, nothing really happened. But then there's some of them where I just like, my whole body kind of just sits up a little straighter. I feel a little bit more energy coursing through me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that did something instantaneously.
Yeah. So it's different, different people and different energy fields react in different ways. And I think, even with me, sometimes because I also watch my videos and I also watch my own work, and sometimes I'll feel it more, sometimes I'll feel it less, sometimes I'll feel it later. So it really just also depends, in what space you are in at that moment in time. But on a subconscious level, you definitely receiving anyway.
Yeah, one question, we're going to topic switch it here a little bit, because I think that was a beautiful way to summarize that specific thing. A question that I have kind of gotten away from in a couple of the past interviews, but I do love asking my guests, is, I'll tell you, whenever you were a child, maybe as a parent, maybe as a guardian, and they probably asked you, like, what was the first thing you wanted to be whenever you grew up? What was the answer that you usually answered that question with?
That's so funny. I actually wanted to be a doctor.
Really?
Yeah. And I studied for like 1 year, I think, biomedical sciences. And then I was like, no, this wasn't for me. But I always wanted to heal. In one aspect or another, I wanted to heal humanity. So for me, it's very much in alignment what I am doing now. So I think thank you for asking that, because it's actually brought me back. It was a very beautiful feeling to feel.
Oh yeah. Well, so that I might have to shift away from the beautiful feeling, because you mentioned earlier about how if somebody may have been a murderer in a past life, they might be a doctor in this life. Do you think there's a corollary there, or was that you, or are you just pulling from random?
Okay. So no, I've had lifetimes where I was actually a nurse in the Second World War, which is quite interesting. No, I've been doing energy work and healing for many, 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 many lifetimes. So I'll do cycles. I'll stay here maybe 5,000 years, then I'll go off. I'll work on different constellations and planets, and then I'll come back here. So this is what I've been doing for most of my incarnations and existences. I've had lifetimes on the human experience where I've been kind of like, I had this one lifetime where it was like around medieval times. I was a drunk and I ended up like being shot in a fight. And then I died, and I had a son in that lifetime, and I was a terrible father. But I haven't had that I can remember or that I've worked through. I would probably know by now if I would have. I haven't had lifetimes where I was kind of like, a murderer or anything like that. But, you also need to understand that because we are all part of source consciousness, it's kind of like, imagine this huge lake, right? And you are a drop that comes out of the lake and incarnates in humanity, but at the same time, you're still part of the whole lake. So anyone can tune into any past lifetime of any soul. This is why there's like 100 people, maybe 1,000 people that says, oh no, I was Jesus. They're just tuning into the experience of that soul, and they can do that because they are all part of the source consciousness, if it makes sense. So that's kind of like where, I don't say the paradox, but where it comes into then knowing, okay, so is this my experience? Is this an experience that I'm having? Is this an experience that I had? Is this someone else's experience? Why am I seeing this? So it's kind of like a vast subject to go in. But for me, like, yeah, I've had many lifetimes where I did what I'm doing now. I was doing this in ancient Atlantis as well. I worked with machinery there. I had many lifetimes. I also had a lifetime where I wasn't a very nice person there as well. So I've kind of seen different sides of me, if it makes sense. But I would say that, yeah, I've neutralized most of my, I've neutralized my earthly karma. So the way it works is you kind of like, you get here for people who have had a lot of incarnations, you get here, you first start remembering and dealing with your karma in this lifetime. So if you were a mean person here, you clear, deal with that one. Once you're done with that, then you start seeing the past lives on Earth. And then you're like, okay, I'm doing this. Then once as a human, so past lives on Earth as a human. Once you're dealt with those, you start seeing the past lives on Earth as a non-human being. So as a high vibrational frequency being or a being of some sort which lived on Earth. Once you've done with that, then you start seeing your life off planet as a galactic being doing the karma in that aspect on the different like constellations and whatnot. So then you need to kind of clear with that. So it doesn't really end.
It just keeps going forever and ever.
So that's from my experience. Yeah. And from what I've seen on people as well, some have more, some have less. It's if you're a being who's had, a lot of lifetimes in your starseed and whatnot, it's actually impossible to achieve full soul fragment retrieval within this lifetime because the physical body couldn't be able to hold all of that, soul capacity that would be from a high vibrational frequency being. So you can it means that the healing doesn't really end. You just kind of get better at it and it kind of gets easier.
So that phrase, that's the first time I ever heard it, soul fragment retrieval.
So basically what happens is when you have, so first of all, let me just start by saying that we are whole. It's not like you're missing parts of your soul and you can't be complete with that. You're already whole, you're already complete, you're already perfect. So this is just very important. What happens is when you have traumatic experiences in other lifetimes or in this lifetime as well. So I'll give you an example. When I had that lifetime that I was shot dead. And it was very traumatic, and it's almost like a little fragment of your soul can actually break away. Doesn't mean that you're not whole, you're still whole, okay? So by going into that experience, what happens is you reintegrate that part of the soul. You're going to love this example. So I had a lifetime where I was a mermaid, and I would have this beautiful voice that could sing. I was like a singing mermaid. And I was massacred. I was killed in a very brutal way. And this came up, and then I was in this human lifetime of now, I was taken through a series of events to this venue on this beach where I relived this massacre, right? So by me reliving it on an emotional level and seeing it and then crying, and then I integrated that part soul fragment of myself. As I integrated that, my like language in singing started opening, and I started singing like high vibrational frequency vocal notes from that lifetime, from integrating that soul fragment. So when you do the soul fragment retrieval, you can also integrate different abilities and psychic intuition and things that you had in other lifetimes.
That's interesting. It's interesting because it's reminding me I had a dream. I work a lot with my dreams, and I had like this dream intention where it was like, if I was going to always be joyous, what would I remember about myself that I don't remember now? And throughout the course of the dream, it basically played out. It was with people in this current lifetime, but I think it was probably, it was from a past life, because I got the intuition that, I got basically killed very instantly. Like I was shot, like not ready for it, shot in the head, and it kind of like startled me. But then whenever I woke up, I was like just filled with joy, which was like such a profound thing, right? Like I remembered this past life where I knew that I was shot in the head instantly, like not ready for it kind of deal. And yet I woke up with all this joy, which seems like a crazy thing, but it sounds super familiar to kind of like what you're saying here, where just almost the remembrance of something like that, like, you were a singer. And so I'm sure there must've been some sort of connection with singing, and then the way you were killed, where you're like, okay, don't singing bad, singing, is going to have me die in this crazy way. But then just that remembrance is like, oh no, it had nothing to do with singing. Like, you're totally good.
Yes, exactly. Yes, totally. And what you're saying is basically what happens in the astral is because in fourth dimensional density, there's no limitation of time. So if you imagine the dimensional densities, this is not soul densities, this is like physical densities. So in the first dimension, something just is. In the second one, it overlaps, it is, and it has consciousness of being. In the third one, it is, that has consciousness of being. It can take action, which is third dimensional density and reality, but is limited by the constraints of time and space. When you access fourth dimensional density, so your astral space, you are not limited by time. Time is fluid. You can manifest instantly, right? Mm. But you're still limited by space. You still need to walk, fly, or move into places. So what happens in our astral realms, our guides, our higher selves, even us, we relive and experience these experiences so that we can clear them quickly because there is no limitation of time. So we get sent these traumatic experiences to relive them, or even like just a silly example, you, I don't know, had a fight with someone in high school and you were traumatized by it. And then all of a sudden in your 40s, you dream of it. Okay. Why does that happen? To neutralize that experience, it would be too complicated for you to call up that person or them to call you and say, hey, I'm sorry for the fight we had back in high school, for you to clear that. So it gets sent to you in the astral space because it can be neutralized without the limitation of time, and it's a lot easier. So it's a very powerful healing space, the astral space. So that's what happened with you probably.
That's fascinating. It's also funny because last night I had a lot of dreams about high school friends. So I think it's hilarious that you're
there you go.
bringing up high school now. And I'm like, shit, like, was she in my dreams last night? Are you there?
Maybe.
So I don't know what's going on with that. That was something I was going to figure out today, was why are all these people from high school still popping up? But I think it's probably super similar to what you're saying right here, right? Where it's like there's some sort of energetic imprint that was imposed to me. There's maybe something around the questions that I'm looking for that need to be sort of integrated or like explored maybe a little bit deeper to fully embody it, or maybe they already have, And so I guess that's interesting is are you aware of like when you actually need to physically do things in this dimension, or okay, let me back up a little. Are you aware of things that need to be integrated that you got to physically do in this dimension, or that your light language has just automatically cleared? Does that make sense? Like if you're...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like kind of like if I know my lessons.
Yeah. Like do you need to physically act out something in this dimension versus, I did the light language protection?
Oh, yeah, no, I won't. It'll be sent to me. It'll be either sent to me in the astral. I mean, I obviously have lessons and experiences that I need to go through, and that comes down to the karmic ones in the karmic ties and the soul ties. So with other people, with either helping them or things like that. But when it comes to my own things, no, it's either astral or I'll do it myself, or they'll send me in meditation, and then I'll send love and healing to the situation and to whatnot. So, yeah.
So it's very much at this point just a almost like a spiritual type practice. It's not really like you have to really do too much physical things at this point to shift those lessons. It's more of a energetic work you're doing.
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say that my physical, experience is to stay in compassion and gratitude and non-attachment. That would be my, my day-to-day job. To be able to be in the space where I can receive these things and clear them on a space which isn't third dimensional density.
And so as you're kind of like holding that frequency, right, that higher frequency of compassion and love and surrender and non-attachment, do you kind of get led to these experiences, kind of like you were saying on the beach? Because it seems like something that you wouldn't like intentionally be like, oh, there was a mermaid past life, I need to heal this. But it kind of just like, does it kind of just unfold for you whenever you're in that space of surrender?
Yeah, I kind of constantly trust and follow my intuition. So this was like an event that it was actually like in another country. It wasn't even here.
Mm.
It wasn't far. Like we drove there. And then once I got there, and so I knew that there was work for me to do there. I didn't know what it was. And then when I got there, I was like, okay. And this other friend of mine who also got there, I said this to her, and I said to her, and she was also there. And then when I said it to her, she started crying because she started healing that lifetime as well, which was very interesting. Yeah. So I'll know that there's specific areas I'll get sent to them to do specific work. I'll work on the planetary grid as well. So I'll get sent into areas where there's people and then work on the actual grid of the planet to raise the vibration or to clear the karma of the land as well. So I kind of get sent around. So I kind of know, and then I kind of like start doing. And then as I'm doing, I get told, do this, do that, or, work with the moonlight or work in the sunrise or, whatever it is. But again, that's come with, years and practice and time. Yeah.
Gotcha. It was just something that's kind of like developed as it's kind of gone along. That's super cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool. It seems like there's just like little like trigger points that almost like bring these things back that you're not like consciously aware of, but then there's like little like things that pop up along the path where you're like, oh, I wonder why that's happening. And then it like unravels a little deeper.
Yeah, I would say that it would be like that. Or people get put in my path. And sometimes, it's, for helping them. Sometimes it's for me to uphold a boundary. I guess it's almost like a video game that you get given the choices and the options, and then you need to pick the one that's best, and then through that you're assisting. I mean, for me it's more collective level work. Even when I cleared the massacre, yes, it was part of me, but it was a collective clearing that I did, that I was a part of. And when it comes to my own personal and individual, that mermaid one is a good example because I was sent there for myself, but that doesn't really happen that often. It's more like, like clearing, spaces where maybe there was like a battle or like people dying, or like going to public events with lots of people and opening channel in order to, what I do on a physical level when I go to some places is my whole channel, my whole system goes into crystalline structure and becomes one big chakra. It's kind of like if you imagine like a tornado field, and then I start sucking in people's like low vibrational frequency things, and then I transmute it and convert them, and I send them up into light. So that's kind of like the work that I do when I go into spaces as well. So I'll work like at events where there's a lot of people and things like that.
That's cool. Are these spaces that people would like invite you into, or is it kind of just you find yourself there and you're like, oh, I need to do some work?
I get called, yeah. No, I get called to like, it's like festivals. Like I'll go to like festivals with like 3,000-4,000 people and then channel and clear the space and things like that. Yeah, it'll be like that. Sometimes it's even if I'm like in smaller spaces, like sometimes I'll just, my sister, like it's funny because sometimes they're like, you clear, and I'm like, no, I'm not working. Leave me alone.
Let me be human for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes I'll be sitting in a bar and then I'll start just clearing because there's someone next to me who really needs the help. So it kind of like, I tend to try and keep my channel closed if I'm out and doing my own things because I'm constantly clearing throughout the day. Sometimes when it's full moon or new moon, I'll sit in my pyramid and I'll cry for like an hour and a half, and I'll be clearing for the oppressed women who were murdered when they were trying to obtain the right to vote. And that's something that needed to be cleared on the collective. So if you imagine it like me being some kind of like antenna and whatnot, and because of the frequency that I have and that I hold, then I can hold these kind of like larger experiences within my system because of the vibration that I'm holding. So then they kind of get sent to me, and then I kind of clear them and release them. But then sometimes I need, a little bit of time to like sleep and rest and recover. So it can sometimes take a toll on the physical level as well.
That's super fascinating too that you mentioned this, because I've even thought about this at like a kind of a grand scale, with regards to like these massive issues that we're exploring, right? Like whether it's oppression of women, oppression in America, at least of African Americans, of like the whole, let's say, fascist movement or Nazi, these grand scale, big system ideas. And ideas and, let's say, collective awareness that we're either trying to prevent, or trying to reconcile, or trying to heal. And it sounds like you're at a point with your channel where it could just be an individual person, but you also can take on these traumas that are a part of like the human psyche, like the overlying human psyche, that are almost embedded in everybody, and they're infected almost. And maybe it's not everyone, but it's a huge majority of people that this idea penetrates and has a strong energetic attachment to. You're able to even kind of take that idea and work with it at just like you're at almost the collective level.
Yeah. It's a collective clearing. Yeah. It's literally collective clearing that I could, yeah. And I've been doing this even before I knew what it was. I was already doing it. Now I just know what it is that I'm clearing when I'm clearing it. And now I can say yes or no, I want to clear. Or I'll sit and I'll be like, okay, guys, what is it? Send it through. Okay, like I'm open, send me, whatever, and then I'll clear it. But yeah, so I guess even that understanding also comes a bit with time and experience. But you need to have very firm boundaries to be able to do something like that, because if you're very open and compassionate, which I am, but if you are, empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. So this is the problem now with a lot of starseeds. They're picking up on these things, but they're not firm or structured in their boundaries. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The level at which I can clear is directly proportionate to the level at which I can say no.
I need to hold on to that for a little bit. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of that in my life as well, where it's weird, right? And this might be one of those great paradoxes of the universe that come up every now and then, which is, you would think that by saying no to things, whether it's in my line of work, being on a podcast, or someone coming onto my podcast, or financial opportunities, and it's almost like we think that if we say no to an opportunity, then, or a person even, that there's no potentiality for the universe to like reshape that and then bring it back to us almost tenfold, if that makes sense. And it's interesting to hear the way that you are seeing it in your work, because it's almost like by saying no to certain energies or frequencies, it's allowing you to tap into a higher one for yourself as well.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Boundaries are the highest form of self-love. If you're not solid in your boundaries, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You need to come first. And you cannot go around helping people if at home you don't have a situation that allows you to be at peace with yourself, or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? So it comes down to, saying no, really saying no. And if anything, if I can give a piece of advice to, the people listening out there, rather overdo your boundaries first and then take them down, instead of being too, open and to, still being compassionate, still care about everyone. Don't let it affect you. Don't let it drain you. Don't let it suck energy from you. Don't have attachment to it. And it's difficult. Like it's not easy, because it requires self-discipline, and you can only really meet the experience to the depth at which you've met yourself. And it's the same for channeling. Your channel is going to be as clear as to the depth to which you've met yourself and to which you've done work on your system.
Again, I'm just going to leave some space for that to just settle in.
Of course.
It's fascinating because it feels like what's coming up is like that, almost like pushing that pendulum, that over amount. Like so many people, I mean, myself included in the past, have maybe more so take this back step of just letting so many people kind of push over you almost, so that you need to experience like pushing back, saying no to more things so that you are able to kind of find that balance point. And I think something that might, that certainly probably needs a little bit more emphasis in this conversation is the ability to set boundaries with compassion. Because I'm sure that, you think boundaries, it's like closed off, it's no, it's finite, it's almost mean, right? Because a huge part of our society right now says we need to be inclusive, we need to bring everybody in, we need to help everybody. And yet that almost feels like it comes from a place of incompassion or a lack of
empathy.
Yeah, but almost like a childlike state of not being able to actually help, right? It's almost like this feeling of, okay, we need to help everybody, but you're obscuring the fact that you're not helping yourself in that manner. It almost feels like you, like don't get me wrong, right? At the mass scale, we want to help as many people as we can, but I think you answered this and you said this when you were talking, was that if you're not helping yourself, if you're not able to even be this own beacon of light for yourself, then the quote unquote help that you're going to be giving to other people might not actually be helping them. It might be more hindering than a help. So it's like, okay, how do you even know that the way that you're helping them is in their best interest? How do you know that how do you know that it's not actually coming from your own sense of self-righteousness and maybe even your own ego to say, hey, I want to help other people, and like, yeah, that's great, do that. But how do you really know that you are helping somebody if you've never even helped yourself to begin with?
It comes down to truth. If you're in your truth, then you're in integrity. And if you're in integrity, then you can assist. If you're not in your truth, if you're doing things against your will, or if your thoughts are not in alignment with your words and actions, then you're not in your truth. Only by being in your truth, you can be able to hold that space and be in that space of integrity for others. Because remember, society puts us in a space of believing, especially for women, but also for men, that people pleasing, I don't want to argue, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that and whatnot. But remembering that if you are not saying no to something that isn't in alignment with you, then you're not only doing a favor to yourself by not being in your truth, but you're also taking a lesson away from the other person. So just by being in your truth, you are actually assisting to healing others to an extent. You are leading by example, and then understanding that if you say no to someone with compassion, you say, listen, like, this is not okay for me. Like, this is my truth, say it nicely. You don't have to be rude. If they get angry, that's their problem. That's their emotions. You can't control them. You can only control your own actions, thoughts, and emotions, not other people. They are choosing to get upset. They are choosing to get angry. They are choosing to go against you. You're just in your truth. You cannot take responsibility for their actions. So if we all start seeing things in this way, it'll be a lot easier. How many times people come to you, oh, you've made me angry. Oh, you've made me sad. I haven't made you anything. I'm not in control. How can I make you sad? It's your emotions. You know what I mean? But we don't get taught this, Yeah. People, we get taught to people please. We get taught that we need the car to be happy, or the house, or, we need external things to fill in what's within us, when all we really need to do is be in our truth and learn the conditioning in order to be kind of like this neutral space, and then relearn what is our own individual truth. And then from that point, from that integrity, then we can help and assist others.
Yeah, that's so true. Pun not intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was I was thinking of something, but I lost it. I looked at my candle and then I just completely lost what I was going to say. Womp, womp, womp.
I'm sure it will come back.
It does that every now and then, right?
In divine alignment.
Yeah, maybe I was supposed to forget it. And then I started thinking about the pyramids. I was like, oh, I can't. See, that's the thing. Is like, you gotta make sure you're still in that pocket of paying attention. You lost me for a second because I saw your pyramid and then I was like, oh, I can't wait to get one. I was like, wait, what are we talking about again? It's like, shit.
That's okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's not supposed to happen.
It's human.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll get your pyramid soon.
I do want to get that pyramid soon. I was even.
Yeah, I know it changes your life. I promise you. I'm so excited for you to get it.
I can't wait for you to charge it for me. I'm like, oh, sick. But so do they all kind of collapse? Is that going to be, do I need to like kind of put constraints on it, or will they all just be able to?
No, they fit, they screw into each other. You don't have to like build anything. Yeah. So they come in like these tubes, and then you kind of like slide them into each other, and then you kind of build it.
How does
There's different ones.
How does the airport deal with that? Are they cool with you just transporting large copper tubes?
So, well, no. So what I do is I bubble wrap it.
Oh, okay.
And then I send it through as fragile.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I did the last time. Yeah.
Do you worry?
So I set it in. I don't take it with me on the plane. It goes in with the suitcases.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Would there be any concern, or do you like do some sort of protection whenever you're going to put it in that environment, such that because like different people are going to be handling it, it's going to be jumbled around?
I would say that whenever I'm traveling, I'm always gridding. So I grid a lot. Like I grid a lot more than what you're.
Real quick.
So I put like grids around me of sacred geometry, of white light, just like protection grids. And I've got a lot of armors and layers. Like I'm very armored around me because of the level of work that I do. Again, so a normal person wouldn't really necessarily need to do this. If I don't grid as much, I end up getting psychically attacked, or there's blockages or things like that. So whenever I'm traveling, I generally just grid beforehand. I don't specifically grid the pyramid, but I just grid everything in myself. It was funny because I was in Cape Town recently, and I walked into this bar and I sat down. I was with a friend of mine, and we sat like in the back room outside, and this lady comes up to me, and she's an energy worker, and she comes up to me and she said, "You just walked in with a team of the 4 archangelics and like a white grid, and you just gridded the whole place." And I laughed and I said to her, "Yeah." She was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, this is what I do, and this is the team that I travel with and I walk around with." So I just thought it was quite funny that she saw it, because she was like, "I can't believe like I'm seeing this," because she had vision. So I tend to, I don't want to say overgrid, but I just tend to do that a lot. Again, it's not necessary if you're not doing, this type of work, just a little bit of white light and whatnot. But I would say generally if you're traveling, just so that everything goes smoothly, and just to help you be in flow.
What about people who might be more in the public eye as well? Because I'm thinking about this for myself, and it's interesting because over the last several months, wow, probably a lot more than the several months, I've been trying to figure out why I've been having to sleep so much. And I'm curious in your mind, though, if this even comes back to just like posting content. So many people see it. Yeah. You get kind of put into their peripheral vision. Is there more? I'm just thinking about this now, that I think this might be contributing to the fact of how much I've been sleeping. It might be that I am trying to heal or ward off all of that, let's say, energy from the posts I make to, because sometimes it's controversial stuff, and totally respect that. So, could it be even subconsciously that people are placing that energy on me unknowingly? And that might be even something that I need to take a little bit more, let's say, action or due diligence in protecting myself being in the public sphere.
Yeah. So what happens is, I know, because I also need to do this through my videos. What happens is whenever you are interacting on a social platform, even like me and you now, or even like if you're speaking to someone like at a restaurant or whatnot, you form a chord with them. Okay, so you form a chord. When there's an alignment in vibration and frequency, you form a chord. So what happens when you post like videos or do lives or things like that, you've got hundreds of people that are chording into you. So you want to be able to release those chords. If you don't, then they end up draining you. So that's kind of like what's happening with you. You're probably not aware of it. Some of them are probably being released naturally, but you're not aware of it. So a little bit of shielding, and just even a little bit of cleansing, like with smudge or sage or anything like that. And also the technology as well. So putting just white light around your phone, around your computer, and around things, like doing like a few small little things. It's just going to help you stay in that space where you're able to post, but you they can't really, like, you want to get to a space where they're not really courting into you at all.
Okay. It's almost like would they be courting into something else, or like some like peripheral thing, or is it more just they're getting the information and leaving? It's not like they're in and staying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of see it like it would bounce off. That's kind of like how I see it, because you healed it. So they would kind of like consciously or subconsciously maybe try, and then, yeah, they would receive the information, and it wouldn't affect you, if it makes sense. But you'll still, like, when you're doing public work, you'll still, like, I still have to clear. That's why my pyramid helps me. That's why a pyramid would help me as well, because it'll stop from that. And when you sit in it, it will help with clearing things and helping them release and whatnot. And the same with your space and your house and things like that. So generally, yeah, it can. This is probably why you're sleeping more and you might be feeling more tired.
Okay. Whew, I like that. There's something that felt resonant there, so I'm gonna have to dive into that. I'll tell you, I think I'm just like anxious to even just kind of like get out of here, because I really want to like implement these things. But I also love talking to you, so I'm trying to figure out this fine balance right here. Is there anything else that you, I guess, like talk about normally that you want to bring up or touch on, or, because I feel like there's been.
Just before maybe I pull through some codes, I just want to maybe just tell people a little bit about my work, how they can find me and things like that. So I have a lot of different things that I'm actually currently offering. I offer programs for 6 weeks. Or 6 months, which is intensive programs. I train light workers. So I train you to learn to do, what it is that I do in your own unique and individual way, and then give you tools to help you and assist you. And then I do one-on-one programs as well, which like are just like one off, or you can even just see me for an energy clearing, standard clearing, a past life clearing. I do light language activations. I do collective healings as well once a month, which are only for $12, and it's 45 minutes of channeled light language. And it really helps in supporting me. And it's something that I give affordable, to everyone. And so even people who maybe don't want to take the one-on-one, but still want to get like a lot of light language. And then I release a lot of content as well. Obviously, you post my links like on my Instagram and my YouTube and things like that. I've got a few workshops up. So if any of you are interested in starting your own spiritual business, and the energetics behind financial abundance and how it works in any business really, then I've got that up. And then I've got one for psychic attacks, protection, intrusive thoughts, releasing attachments. And I've got, this is also, you're hearing it here the first time, I'm going to be releasing a new workshop on the 4th of April, the 404. I don't know 100%. They've just said to me that I'm going to assist with anchoring the Metatronic grid. So it's going to be work with Archangel Metatron and within his grid and within his vibrational frequency. But I don't know the details yet, but it's going to be up on my website in the next week or so. And then I'm holding an in-person workshop in Cape Town. I don't know if you have any listeners in South Africa, that they're more than welcome to come through to that. That'll also be in the middle of April. And I guess that's kind of it. I just wanted to, just say where you guys can find me. Obviously, you leave my links or my website.
For sure.
And things like that. Yeah.
Those will all be in the show notes below. Yeah. Perfect. Those will all be in the show notes. And then I think you also said you had a couple PDF books or like ebooks. Is that also something in there?
Yeah, I've got a course, which is a Pleiadian Starseed Activation course, which basically uses Pleiadian energy, where I speak a little bit about the history, the galactic history, and then there's codes and activations. I think it's 11 different videos in it. And then I've got an ebook, which is about 45 pages on energy cords. And I just explain the different types of cords and how to release them. There's methods to do it. And that's only for $20. So I have a lot of things that are accessible to everyone, because I really want people to have this information and to apply it, and then, kind of like to pass it on as well. And I'm in the process within the next, few months, I don't know the time frame yet, that I'll probably be releasing a book of light codes as well on like a not a digital but an actual one, that you can physically buy as well. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'm sure there's other stuff. If you go on my website, you can just have a look and check it out, or send me an email. I'm always happy to answer. I respond to all my emails, because sometimes people are like, oh, is it your assistants? I'm like, no, guys, if you send me an email, it's me. I don't get anyone to do it for me. I don't get anyone to run my social media. I do everything myself, which is what I love, connecting with people.
Yeah, I'm looking through your website now. I'm definitely gonna have to dive into some of this stuff. This is pretty cool.
For sure.
All right, cool. So is
there any?
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I wanted to say, if there's any intention that you would like for me to anchor in with the light language, generally system clearing, throat clearing is generally what comes through on a collective level. But if there is anything, you can let me know, and then I'm going to start.
The only things I'm thinking of right now are egoic based and personal to me. So I'd say just go with whatever you're feeling for the people that are going to listen to this.
Okay. So just a little bit of a thing. I might be coughing, gagging, burping. I'm just releasing and clearing energy throughout. So don't worry, guys. Nothing is happening to me. So I invite you all to close your eyes and anchor into your body. As you find a comfortable breathing rhythm, with every inhale, you breathe in light. With every exhale, you release all that no longer serves you. And as you relax your body, relax your energy field, relax your system, you let go of any thought, any worry, anything that's been on your mind. Allow to be in a space of openness, of oneness, for the codes to come in and anchor. And as we call on the Archangelic Collective, Michael to the south, Uriel to the north, Raphael to the east, Gabriel to the west, we call on Archangel Metatron with his blue cloak of protection from above, and Sandalphon to seal the grid from below. We call on our higher selves, our spirit guides, anyone else who wishes to be present for the greatest and highest good. You're welcome in this space. Daya terokuaniet marai shiratakra treo tuk unaratik airukukukukuna yeshit karatrien maratoro isirataki tietok anietara chieno anmaraya reotoro isirata tieta krektarotok ukieran rietu maria rea trea ieshiratakra. Opening systems, opening, activating into blueprint structure, calling in divine light, rays, anchoring, cleaning, releasing, letting go. Yeah, I'm doing like an emotional clearing in the solar plexus now, clearing, releasing, letting go. Daratie koroto kuma ishena takara trieta krieta ra teratra tien mara tieto kura takasiera tekato tukareat merea tekaro ieshera tieta ran rieta reasiero ora ishera takaki releasing, letting go. It's going to assist also for the circulation, and anyone who's got blood problems, pushing out all that no longer serves you, letting go, starting, releasing, out, you go up into the light, transmuting, pulling in more light, divine rays, anchoring or rays, rainbow rays into the system, opening, activating into more light, coming in, Divine raise, anchoring, pushing through, pushing out, all that no longer serves you, letting go, old structures, old paradigms, activating, neural pathways, synapses, opening, 2 more light, expanding, attuning into higher chakras, higher heart, expansion, green rays will raise, coming in, opening, chiaro trokora triet mara terasiera takra, triatik ero achiera takrie naratria takratik arotra, opening. I'm working on the cranial structure now, opening, activating, letting go, removing blockages, removing shields, opening, 2 more light, activating, amplifying, tarochira takrietara, triatic ura train ram reotoro trietara. Na yo cara trieta re siro to kuma ishenataka te na roaria ra yoro iatera ishia tek ayo sheda kra yo tiatek a iechenataka me areo toro triatre re arotro isheratek aro naisen mataka siratakra te na tok an yetma re a ieshirotokora releasing. Okay, now I'm clearing timelines. I'm going down the ancestral lineage, clearing, releasing, detangling, decording, opening, 2 more light, calling in more light, divine rays, anchoring. Ya te caso so kotkura triet marakiera takrai ya tria sierra takra dre an maria ro roa ria re arrai extracting. So you might feel things pull out from the spinal cord, from the solar plexus. You might feel nausea, dizziness. You might feel like you're overheating. Takiero trokan maratrieta nia tuning. Attuning systems, opening, calling in more divine rays, anchoring, taratuku, ra Takiero to naishi natakiera shirazi, open our hearts to compassion, takoro inchima takara to love, tainkinchimara neo shinana to higher understanding of self, taki enoro onani ati eishiratikara isiroto cause of knowledge, anchoring kuro ishiratikara isira universal knowledge, universal understanding of self, tara ichira intikara isira of universal laws and structures, ki anukuna an ara ichima aria isirataka, remembering who we are. That umara sirat, remembering why we're here. Tak unochinata nshira nshina nara isi unotokura isira nara isi ate orotukura ishira takra ndri an enuru an chinaka kukuku kishira takra tra yatekara isira tokura, remembering to return to the heart, to return to love, to return to that anchor of love, anchor of connection, to the one, to the self, to source consciousness, divine being. You are held, you are supported, you are protected in every single way. It's okay to let it go. Let go. Stop holding on. Na iraishie ta ierotokura ishie nataka nta yetok anaratriet mariatik ura isiera takra it okukukuku naieta sieta ichena takra nda rietokura with gratitude Gratitude, with gratitude, with gratitude, with gratitude. Big things are coming, big things are opening up. Tiero ishiro tokoro ishira tek anye tokumanye na nchiena taka. Ndai nchiena na ria tiesie kora ishiena nie tokuka kiera ishira taka. Ndra otukuna ria sie orratrie takara ishira takara. Go out there, spread the love, spread the light. Ka uno ishenati en inchenataka sira, shining, shining, shining. Shining light out. Ka ro ishena na chira takrati ko. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is done, it is done, it is done, it is done. Closing, closing, sealing, closing, sealing, closing, sealing. Closing, sealing, closing, sealing, closing, sealing, closing, sealing, closing. Rio to cry, 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 atra. Nataka chiro tokura trietaka. So you gently anchor back into your body and ground back into your physical vessel. Drop into your breath. And you can either choose to stay in process or open your eyes. And just anchor back into third dimensional density and reality in your own time. There is no rush.
Man, that felt good.
Mm.
Definitely did something.
How are you feeling?
Calm. My fingers are vibrating pretty fast. I was feeling like a lot of up and down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It activates the light body, so you'll feel like your whole body is either vibrating or like a little bit like ooh, like loose, or spacey. This is why I usually do the light language at the end, if anything, so that everyone can just go off and process and integrate and stay with what it is that comes up for them at that moment in time.
Yeah. I could see how you just want to sit in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to add anything else to that. So I'll tell you, thank you so much for being here. And Conscious Monkeys, see you guys in the 6th dimension.